So again, like Chris mentioned, I'm the founder of New Jersey Fashion Week. This was something that I started on my own and started with my savings. And what we wanted to talk about today, because if some of you have never been to a TED Talks, it talks about inspiration and how do you begin what you really want to do, your passion and things. I'm here to tell you the realistic view of what really happens when you start your business. That's the first thing. Just so a lot of people don't know my background, I actually worked in digital publishing for about 18 years. If you know the company John Wiley & Sons, they do the Jeopardy questions and the dummies books. I actually worked for that company. No, I don't know the Jeopardy answers. We don't even know who does that at the company. So I worked in publishing for 18 years, and it'll make sense why I'm talking about this, because we're also going to go into branding and how do you get sponsorships and partnerships. I want to talk a little bit about that. But I was actually a corporate trainer, and I would actually go out and I would travel to places like corporate companies like ExxonMobil. I would travel to Canada to like Canadian consortiums and universities and actually present their products and their content. And that's what I would do for the company. I say actually a lot, in publishing they hate that. But after 18 years, what I decided, this was a great experience for me, and right now, the first thing I tell every entrepreneur, every business person, keep your day job. I don't care how you don't like the person, who you're working with, working for, your partner, keep your day job. Save every ounce of money that you have. That's the first thing I tell people. And for 18 years, I did that, and I saved a lot. I had the 401k, had that, and it's really important for you before you branch out. And I'm going to go into that because it's important when you're building your brand that you have your own personal support system, financial, emotionally, and socially when you build your company. And to me, I'm developing my brand. I don't say, oh, I've created and I have this brand and I'm set. To me, it's an ongoing process. And whether you're a business owner or maybe you're even a corporate person now, which is great, that's part of that. You have to keep that in mind. Otherwise, you're not going to grow, you're not going to expand, and you're not going to really succeed, which is what we're talking about today. And like the great speakers that we have here, how they've achieved what they've achieved. So after 18 years, did that. I started an online retail store. I started selling handbags and jewelry. It was interesting. I'm the kind of person that never liked fashion. I was a woman. I actually never liked shopping. I told Chris. When I used to dread, when I was like 18, 19, I used to dread going to the mall with my girlfriends and my mom. I never thought I would get in fashion. Never in a million years. I used to hate shopping. So look at it now. You never know where you're going to end up is kind of the point with that. So eventually, I started an online shopping site because when I would actually travel as a trainer, when I would go to like the Midwest, for example, and those for you, don't laugh at the Midwest people go, wow, where'd you get your stuff? Oh my gosh, you're from New York. And eventually, I decided to sell things to people who couldn't get them. So that was the difference of my online shop. You know, a lot of people right now, they say, oh, I'm doing an online shopping site. The thing is, and what people don't understand about their brand is, who are you targeting? I didn't want to go and be another vendor, another person doing an online shopping site in New York. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, if you're successful, please don't beat me up. But what I wanted to do was I realized that I had to find a different market. And that was one of the things that I did. So what happened, a lot of women from like Canada and from the Midwest started buying handbags from me and jewelry. Eventually, what I did was while I was traveling, I was a little bit sneaky while I was a trainer, but they can't fire me now, so I can tell you what I did. I would also go and visit different boutiques, and I would actually find places where there were designers. And eventually, what I realized, there were a lot of designers that wanted to promote their products, but just didn't have that opportunity. And that's where I began New Jersey Fashion Week. And one thing that happened with New Jersey Fashion Week, you know, and again, you know, I'm not just talking about entrepreneurs, but when we get into the word talking about brand, there's two things people said when I wanted to start a New Jersey Fashion Week. New Jersey and fashion, there's no way those two things go together. That's what people told me. There's no way, it's not gonna work because no one's gonna ever wanna come to a fashion week in New Jersey. People in New York were like, first of all, I don't know half the cities you're talking about in New Jersey, where they are. You know, everybody thinks they need a passport to come visit you in New Jersey. So why would you even start something in fashion? There is no way that that's gonna happen. So the thing that I had to think in my head was back to my days in publishing, was how do I make this brand clear to people that this was not a New Jersey fashion hick event or ghetto. I'm pretty direct. How do you actually do that? And that's the first thing that I tell people. It's really important to understand what your brand is and what you're bringing to the market. A lot of people, they have a great idea about a product. There's plenty, hundreds of people out there. You know, I tell people from a fashion beauty perspective, there's 20 million people out there that want to do their own makeup line. I mean, so many people that want to be the next great Michael Kors and that. The thing is though, what really are you doing to drive this brand that makes it different, and who is your consumer? And a lot of people sometimes they go, a lot of designers, they'll come up to me, they're like, I spent $2,000 on fabric, I'm a couture designer, and couture does not mean just because you sew in your house, I gotta tell you, which most designers think. That's not being a couture designer, that's Valentino, if you ever watch his movie. But what I try to explain to people is, it's more than that. And I go, the first thing I ask them, they'll sit and they'll give me this whole speech of how amazing their garments are. And I go, well, who's your customer? Who's gonna buy that $600 dress that you just made in your attic? And that's what I mean by not understanding your brand. And that's the same thing I had to do with me with New Jersey Fashion Week. I didn't want people to think that it was just a small event. It turns out, most of my designers in my first year when I had Fashion Week, they weren't from New Jersey. I had a designer from the Philippines, I had a designer from Hawaii, and I had 3 from New York that said, we don't want to be in New York during our shows. And what I did with my brand was, I also opened it to consumers. And I connected with consumers, and I made partnerships. And that's what people don't get with their brand sometimes, and that's what I learned from working in publishing, because I knew how to communicate to companies like ExxonMobil, the brand John Wiley and Sons, our content. And if you don't know how to communicate your brand, no one's going to believe you, and that's why you're not going to get a sponsor or a viable partner. And that's what people don't understand. And when I say partners, Coca-Cola sponsored me for 2 years. New Jersey Fashion Week, for example. One of our sponsors, which I always tell people, if you say, well, how do you get a sponsor? LA Sunset Tan sponsored me for his sponsorship. So you can get the irony in that. Sometimes people laugh that they would see that LA Sunset Tan was one of my sponsors. And that kind of thing. And the reason why I tell people that is just because I want you to think, well, what did she say that they believed that they should be a part of this event? And that's what you have to do with your brand. So people go, well, how do I do that? Well, again, it's really understanding you. And a lot of people think that's a cliche. It's really not. I understand my strengths and my weaknesses. And a lot of people really don't sit and take a look at themselves. They go out and go, I got this great product, it's awesome, and it's fabulous, and I'm going to do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to really look at, too, and Chris and I were talking about that, how are you going to execute that? How are you really going to execute it? Because execution is the buy-in that you need to interest sponsors. A lot of people don't think about that. Fashion Week I had in my head, and it doesn't matter, 20 other people could have came up with New Jersey Fashion Week. There's New York Fashion Week, there's Milan Fashion Week, there's Charleston Fashion Week. I tell everybody all the time. There's Atlantic City Fashion Week. But I'm very clear on this is how I wanted to present fashion in the state of New Jersey. And this is how I wanted to present it to the world. And that's why I was able to get global designers to come, not just the local New Jersey designer. And that's how you need to think about your product. How are you going to get those other people? So what happened with me was when Coca-Cola saw that, the first year they said, oh, you know, we'll give you some product. It's an interesting concept. But also something else happened. Jerseylicious, the Style Network, came to me my first year and said, we want your show to be our 2-hour season finale. So we did it, and with this imaginary show, we actually 9.5 million viewers saw my show in the first year. So I'm not as mean as I am on TV. They just people are like, you're mean for that show. And that's what I'm talking about, people believing in your brand and you being clear on what it is. The only trick with that was what happened. A lot of people thought New Jersey Fashion Week was fake because I was on a reality show. So that was the next thing that happened. So you have to say to yourself, again, when you're building your brand, okay, how am I perceived by other people? And that means personally and that means professionally. So I had to make sure that when I was doing my brand, oh, I don't have 8 minutes, when I was doing my brand, that also people understood that this was a real event, and I just used that reality show as a catalyst to help me get notoriety. Personally, it was just free, it was free press. What more you can get that? I was getting commercials on Style Network, so that was great. But another thing that's really important that you need, and whether, again, you need a board of advisors. I was talking about press, because I think Ted Hackensack is fantastic, and the fact that you all are here means that you're You want to be above and beyond what other people are doing. That's what it means by you sitting here, because a lot of people wouldn't sit here on a Saturday, listen to people tell their stories. To me, and part of that, you need to surround yourself with the right people who are doing that. And a lot of you, you're probably saying, yeah, I have people that support me. I'm not talking about your family or your friends. Don't ever put them on your advisory board. And don't ever put them in your business, if you can help it. Unless they're like a millionaire, then we'll talk about that offline. How we can work that out. But it's really about people who really have good intent. You know, and Mark was right about thinking about like men and things like that. He made me think about people who really understand and know you and are really going to support you. I had an advisory board the first year. I had 15 people on it. By the end of the year, I got rid of 8 because I realized their intent wasn't good for New Jersey Fashion Week, or even my own self-sanity. And when people say, well, Donnella, how do you set up a board? What I also recommend is that the advisory board are people that bring skills that you don't have to your business. I'm not a great tech person, and a lot of people don't know I'm dyslexic. So numbers, my financial people are like, we know we gotta look at your stuff. You know, that's something about me a lot of people don't know, and I have to be careful of that. You also need someone who is really objective. And it's usually your mom or dad, I know, they tell you can't do it or you can't do it. But you really need someone who can say, have you thought of this when you're putting on your event? Have you thought of this when you're doing your product? Have you thought of this when you're trying to expand your career and whatever it is you're doing? A lot of people don't have that. You need that advisory board around you of people. And that's really important. And with those things, and like I said, for those of you entrepreneurs, that'll help sponsors and partners to give you more credibility, because there's people who are not relatives and friends that are actually supporting you. And that's how you get to sponsors sometimes. And I can talk to some of you offline if you want to talk about how do you do sponsors, but that's what a lot of it is. A lot of people just don't understand that. That is part of, you need that credibility of having legitimate people that are professional, that are backing you. And that was one of the things that I had to learn the hard way. I had people that wanted to sabotage my events. I can tell you stories. People who didn't think I should be representing New Jersey. It happens. I shouldn't be representing fashion. I had people say, you know, naysayers. You get that a lot. And you need a support system of people that can really say, no matter what everybody says, we get what you're doing. We are here to support you. And that's really, when you do find those people, like I have a mentor, like Mary Howard, she's over at Parsons. I can call her crying. And she goes, yeah, I know you're crying, but this is what you need to do. Sometimes you need that help and you need that support. And to me, that's even important. You're here now at this TED event. You should really be networking with people as well. That's the trainer in me, sorry. But really, just because you never know the contacts that can help you build your brand. And that's one of the things that I learned in building this. And you know, being an entrepreneur. And it's tough. It really is tough. Like I said, it's developing. But knowing myself is helping me evolve so I don't get stagnant. Because there are going to be people that are going to be competitors that come after you, that want to come. I don't even care and think about it. You hear Oprah all the time. She said, remember all the talk shows that were out when Oprah first came out? Now she's the one, if you ever listen to her talk, that did her 25 years. Remember, everybody remembers Sally Jesse Raphael and Phil Donahue. She had all of those people on her show, talking about how her longevity versus them. So you even as an entrepreneur, you got to think your mindset. Keep your focus, have your advisory board, and don't worry about all those other people. There are some people out there who don't want you to succeed. That's another thing I tell entrepreneurs. That's another thing that people in corporate, we all know, I'm 40, you know, you've all been through it. There's some people who don't, and you have to ignore that. You have to think about your end goal. You have to think about how you're going to do it, and if that means you have to get up 4:30 in the morning, and I am not a morning person, especially with this baby now, I'm like, no way. But you have to do it for yourself. And whatever motivates you to do it. That's the one thing, another thing that I learned. So that's a quick, I'll have 3 minutes. Yay, I love more time. My family's like, oh, they're tired of hearing this story. But that's another thing. And it's really just having, to me in short, I won't take up the whole time, but it's really about, you know your brand and you know what it is. And it's great to believe in yourself, but one takeaway you need to be is realistic. I am realistic about what I can and can't do. And you have to really think about that as well. You want to succeed, but it's how you succeed. You want your execution, you want to build your brand the right way. You need to have a plan on how to do it. Everybody says, oh, I know it. Fashion designers, a lot of them as you see today, some of them are struggling. And that's not a bad thing, but it's because they were so great on the creative end Now they have to look at the finances. There used to be a time when you would never think, they laughed at Pierre Cardin when he went into, the mass market. Now look at every designer in the world's doing that. He actually had a vision. People don't even think about that. He was one of the people that had a vision to do that. Now, Karl Lagerfeld, who's an incredible designer, he's an H&M. So you got to kind of think, also have to think about outside the box of what people are doing with your brand that people might not even agree with. So that's just another thing. So that's in short, my talk. I'm so glad you're here for TED Talks. Chris Garcia, wherever he is, he's awesome. And I want to thank you, and I'll see you at lunch.